Hey guys, it's Ian here with HobbiesofaMan once again, and today we're going to be doing another wrap-up for the month of April. I was about to say May, but we haven't gone through that yet, so we're doing a wrap-up for the month of April. And so, yeah, I don't really have much to say, so let's just get started, right? So, in terms of what I've watched this month, well, I watched Godzilla vs. Kong, which I mentioned was a fine movie, but not my favorite. I don't necessarily like how human Kong's expressions were. I thought that the human aspect of the movie was pretty ridiculous and rather unnecessary. But I did like the fights, obviously. However, I really couldn't believe that Kong was having trouble fighting, you know, the chimpanzee guy. I can't remember his name. Scar King, I think. So, it wasn't my favorite. But it wasn't bad. Like, I enjoyed it for what it was, right? And what it was for me was a distraction, right? I just needed something to clear my head with, just something that I could turn my brain off for. And, well, it was exactly that. So I don't really have complaints in the sense that, like, it achieved its goal, but I definitely have complaints in the sense that it was not that good of a movie. So I don't know. That's kind of odd, I guess. Then I watched Shogun. I watched episodes 6 through 9, and I'm missing the last episode, right? And I haven't watched the last episode because I've been waiting for my roommate, and then my roommate doesn't really want to finish watching it yet. He wants to wait a little bit, so it lasts a little bit longer, and I totally get that. So I'm just waiting for him to watch it, and then I'll do a review for it, right? So it'll be kind of, you know, out of vogue by that time, but who cares? It's fine. I really enjoyed that series. I think it's great. However, I do think that the first half of the season, or the first half of the series total, was phenomenal. Like, it was amazing. There was a lot of tension. There was a lot of, you know, knowledge and growth and interest in what was happening. And then the second half has been less enjoyable. And I think that's because ultimately the story is not about John, right? Blackthorn. It's about Japan. And, well, the vast majority of characters that represent Japan are not that interesting to me, right? I don't really care about Nagakado or whatever the fuck his name is, or, you know, Yabushige's brother, or sorry, nephew, or Toranaga's brother, or the guy that's basically Littlefinger, the guy that lives in Osaka Castle. Like, I don't care about those guys. I care about John and Mariko and Toranaga and the kind of struggles that they want to go through. But the second season has really been kind of a lot less focused on them. Well, I mean, it's been focused on Toranaga, but not in an exciting, tension-filled way in my, like, to my preference, right? So, I don't know. We'll see. I think it's going to stick the landing. I think it'll be a phenomenal season overall, like, when you look at everything. But since I did a review for the first 5 episodes, I kind of had a really strong opinion of those. And then now I kind of have a little bit less of an opinion, or like a little bit less of a positive opinion about the second half of the season so far, right? So hopefully the last episode makes it work for me, but we'll see, right? So yeah, I watched the first season of 3 Body Problem. I had a lot of fun with it. I think it's a really fun, cool TV show, but the characters were quite weird, and kind of the plot line didn't really make sense to me. So, I mean, the characters themselves, most of them are fine. I actually like them, right? I like Sir Davos or whatever. I forgot his name in the show, but he was in Game of Thrones. So that guy, he's my favorite character. I like Augie or Agustina a bit. I like Jin as well. I don't care about Saul. I don't like the guy that had like cancer or whatever. He was so boring. And he was like, dude, you have a shit ton of money. You're gonna die. And the world is shit. Go do something cool and fun. Why are you being a loser and just staying at home? Like, that was so frustrating to me. But his sacrifice was cool at the end. I like Jack, I think was his name, the guy that was also in Game of Thrones. That was also really fun. And the aliens don't really make sense to me, because if you can make ships that can travel across space in like a relatively timely fashion, and you can make computers inside atoms, why the fuck can you not make a dome around your planet that helps you deal with the fucking three-body problem. Like, I feel like the solution to the three-body problem is build a fucking terraforming dome over my planet, right? And then maybe it's not, right? Like, the whole thing about the three-body problem is that it's unsolvable because the system is too chaotic, right? Like, I understand that aspect, right? But there is solutions that do not involve taking over another planet that they could have easily come up with that they didn't do so, and that's really weird. Especially because this is like a logical, quite hive-minded society. So like it feels like they would be able to come up with better ideas, right? Although maybe that's the issue, that because they're not independent, they can't actually compete to find the best idea. And so once they find one idea, they kind of just keep going with it, right? That might be it, but that was not explained in the show, right? So my issue with Three Body Problem was that it doesn't make too much sense for the vast majority of time. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, I'm fine with it. I think it's enjoyable sometimes to be like, okay, why the fuck does this not make sense? And trying to figure it out as you go, right? But at the end of the day, it's like there's supposed to be tension here, and I don't feel tension because there's like 15 different ways to solve the issue, and just no one is smart enough to figure it out, right? Or like no one is willing to get out of their, like storyline or whatever to figure it out, right? And so that doesn't come off as like intelligent. It comes off as like bad writing. So I don't know. But I'm not saying the show is really badly written. Like, I think that the show succeeds at doing what it has to do, which is adapt the source material as far as I understand it. But the thing is that I think that the source material might be a bit too flawed, and I don't really understand why people like it, right? But I haven't read it, so I'm not really sure. Then I watched the first season of FRIEREN, 28 episodes. Phenomenal, beautiful, gorgeous, enjoyable, so relaxing. It was cathartic. Not really. I don't have anything that makes me feel cathartic about that series. But like, what I mean is, for me, being really stressed at the time I was watching it was very cathartic in the sense that like, oh, I can relax through these characters, right? Which is not necessarily the catharsis that I think that type of story is trying to achieve, right? So yeah, but either way, I recommend FRIEREN a lot. I think it's phenomenal. I did a review for it, so you can go watch it if you're interested. Then I watched the first episode of Kaiju number 8. I have not watched more because I'm waiting for my roommates to have time to watch it, and they haven't had time yet, so we'll see when that happens. I watched the movie Monkey Man. I want to watch it again. I think it's out of theaters now, so hopefully it comes to one of the streaming services we have at some point here soon, because I really enjoyed it and I want to watch it again, right? So then I watched the first episode of Fallout, and actually I watched like 2/3 of that episode. And although I think the content in it is pretty cool and I love the production value, I'm not really interested in the story yet, and nor am I interested in the IP. Like, I don't care about that. I'm not, interested in Fallout at all, since I don't play video games. I have no interest in like the IP, right? And so I think that's making it so I have no interest in the show, because I watched it, I liked it, but I have not felt the desire to go back and finish watching that episode or watch further beyond that, right? But I think I will eventually, since my roommate is interested, but I'm not necessarily sure that it's going to be a show for me, even though there's a lot of elements that work. I'm just not interested, right? So yeah, I watched Cujo. This is the first Stephen King movie I've ever watched. It was also a very boring movie. I think it's because it's one of those, like, it's kind of like Alien in the sense that, like, when it came out, it was probably horrifying for people because they had not really seen anything like it before. But as a modern person, it's so boring because it's not actually full of tension. I don't care about these characters. It feels so slow. And then honestly, it feels like the dog was abused in that movie because it was like gooey and slimy all the time, and it was disgusting looking. So I don't know. Maybe they should remake that movie. Yeah. I watched episode 5 of Invincible. I liked it. I think I'm finally getting to stuff I've not seen from the comic book, which is interesting. I don't necessarily think I feel like continuing to watch it. I feel like I'd rather read the comic book. And I don't think that's good. But also it's because Invincible killed its traction by stopping halfway through the season. I don't know who the fuck thinks those are good ideas, because like it's clearly not. Either wait until you have the whole season finished and then release it, or fast track it after you release it ahead of schedule so that you can get all of the episodes out in a timely fashion, right? I think it's BS. And also the fact that the way that they timed it so Invincible came back right after they made the adjustment so that you had to pay more to watch without ads is some bullshit. Like, like I don't really have a problem with like marketing and techniques to make more money, as long as they're not like so freaking visible and they're like ridiculous. Because like Prime already cost like $200, dude. Like, do you really need me to pay you $3 more or whatever it is that price is, right? Like it's ridiculous. It's especially because it's something that had already been offered and now they're changing it so it costs more, right? I don't think that works. But I mean, you can argue that about a lot of different platforms, right? So I don't know. And then I watched the Spy Family movie. And this movie was phenomenal. It was great. I loved that the action sequences were great. The story was really simple. And actually, it's very similar to arc number 6 of the series, I think. Or number 7, I can't remember. In terms of like the social interactions between Yor and Lloyd. Which is, Yor thinks that she's going to get replaced by, what's her name? Midnight? And she's kind of worried. But then it ends up being that Yor is better than her for whatever reason, right? Like that kind of idea is very similar to the Tennis Campbell done arc from the actual series, which is like, I don't know, let me think. It's like chapters like 29 to 35 or something. I can't remember exactly. It's like the tennis arc in Spy Family. And so it's quite similar to that, but it still works really nicely. And I really loved it. And there was some really weird, funky ass stuff that was really funny throughout the movie. So I liked it a lot. I think it's great. If you have not had a chance to watch it and it's still available in theaters, I recommend you guys go see it because it's really, really fun, right? So yeah, that's it for the watch list. In terms of novels, I did read a little bit of Legends and Lattes, which is actually quite nice. I really liked it. I think it's enjoyable. I've read the first 30 pages, right? So that's not too much, but that's like a tenth of the book. So that's pretty good. And it gave me a good understanding of like what this story is supposed to be about. And I like that. I think it's really relaxing and comforting and slow, and I enjoy that. That's kind of what I need right now. But I couldn't hold myself back. And I kept reading The Wandering Inn, so I'm halfway through book 5. I'm right before the next Geneva chapter, which is more or less like exactly in the middle of the book, right? And man, I love The Wandering Inn. It's just so enjoyable. It's ridiculous and fun and easy to read, and I just can't wait to talk about it some more. But I do need to wait because I don't want to burn myself out reading it. So I do need to slow down. I want to do a video, talk about general things about The Wandering Inn before I finish reading book 5. I want to get back to Legends and Lattes and finish it. I want to come back to Cradle. I think that I need to go back to that story for a bit. And I need to do other things, read other things before I come back to The Wandering Inn. And it's proving to be really hard to do that. Something about The Wandering Inn is really attractive to me. Like, it's really relaxing, right? And I just can't help myself. So, I don't know. I don't want to keep reading it, though. I don't want to, like, force myself to read so much of it, or, like, give into my impulses so much that I end up burning myself out of this series, right? Which has happened to a lot of people from the bit that I've seen on Reddit, right? And I don't want that to happen to me. I need to be a little bit more conscious of that. So I need to kind of ease up, right, on it a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of content out there for The Wandering Inn. Like, The Wandering Inn has way too many chapters. There's 9 volumes, but I think that that's actually like 40 books, and like 40 novel length pieces. So like, it's not like it's gonna end anytime soon, but at the same time, like, that's kind of the problem, that I won't be able to finish it and move on to something else for a long time. And I feel like that's going to be part of the issue, right? So I hope I won't have to do that. I hope I'll be able to stop myself a little bit, right? So yeah, that's it for the novels. I haven't really read too much else. I will take a moment here, and then I'll come back to talk about comic books, and then we'll end with the manga, right? So, okay, so in terms of comic books, I read a lot, actually. That's the bulk of this month, which is why I basically failed at reading all of the stuff that I said I was going to read in terms of manga, which is really disappointing because I really wanted to read a bunch of these, sports series, and I didn't really get to read many of them, which sucks. I'm pretty upset about that. But at the same time, I honestly didn't even have that much time. The reason I ended up reading so many comics compared to everything else was because I had time at the beginning of the month, and then finals crept up on me. Well, I knew they were coming, and I started studying, ahead of time, but then I still ended up kind of having to study basically all day for like 2 weeks in a row. And I honestly, I'm still supposed to be doing that, right? But I'm taking a break right now. And that really, hampers my reading desires, because it just makes me want to not do it, in the sense that I've been staring at PowerPoints and notes and work pages all fucking day. I don't want to then look at written words on a page, right? And so it really tanks my desire to read a lot. So it really makes it kind of difficult, but it is what it is. I'll just move on from it. It's fine. I'll end up having to cover the sports series that I didn't read this month, some other month, and that's all right. It's no big deal. Here is what I actually read for comic books, though. Sorry about that long tangent there. So I read Frank Frazetta, Johnny Comment, and actually the reason I was able to read this so easily, even though it's a big ass book, is because it's actually little comic book strips, right? So I read 1 or 2 of them, and then move on, and then come back to it later, and then I would just keep doing that until I finish the book. And it's not the best. I have a review for it coming, so be aware of that. If you want to hear me talk about Frank Frazetta's writing, or Frank Frazetta's early comic books. He didn't write this. If you're interested, I will have a review coming for it soon. But it wasn't really the best, mostly because it's from the 50s, and it's a daily strip, right? So it's just supposed to be like a few seconds of enjoyment, and then you move on. The real kicker, the real valuable stuff here is the artwork. It's, Frank Frazetta's ability to make these really interesting, almost cartoony, but almost realistic kind of drawings. And these really beautiful and interesting female characters, right? And, well, he succeeds in that quite well. The stories start with a really strong premise, and then quickly deviates to just kind of repeating the same thing in like a very Scooby-Doo kind of esque vibe, which is really odd to say, but if you read this, you'll know what I mean. And then it kind of devolves into like not really being about what Johnny Comet is supposed to be about at the end. And, well, it's not the best by the end of it, right? By the end of it, you're just like, okay, fine, whatever. It doesn't really matter. It took me 3 seconds to read this page. Who cares, right? So it's a little bit disappointing in that sense, but the artwork is, like a 9.9 out of 10. Like, it's so great. So many things are beautiful, especially the black and white stuff. There are color pages, right? But those are faded and old because they scanned them from a real piece of paper, and so they don't look as good as the black and white stuff that's been scanned, right? But Frank Frazetta's art style is phenomenal. It's so wonderful to look at, right? So I enjoyed every second of it because I was like loving the artwork, but I wasn't really all that stimulated mentally in terms of like the story, right? So those are my thoughts on that. I will expound on that a lot in my review. It's going to be like 30 minutes long. So you'll be able to hear that. Otherwise, I read some single issue comics. Starting with this one that I read digitally here. This is Xolotl, Xolotl. And it's a indie published comic. It's by Tony Hernandez, who I follow on Twitter, and I bought this a while back, and I hadn't really had a chance to read it, and I did. And it's kind of interesting. It's basically if Batman Beyond was not actually bat themed, he was like, you know, dog themed or whatever, and he had this animal partner, and he was just kind of going around, you know, killing terrorists and drug dealers. And I mean, it's fun, but I didn't really feel like there was much going on in this first issue, and I will try to do a proper review for it, but I don't necessarily think I want to do that because it might just come off negative, and that's not really good for indie authors, right? So we'll see. But like, it was an interesting thing. The art style is pretty fun. The colors are cool. The thematics are also interesting. Like, the aesthetics are interesting. But I didn't really get too much, you know, juice out of the story element, right? So yeah. So that's it for Xolotl. Let's actually move on to comic books here. So this is basically everything that I've already read that I didn't buy this past week. So here's Blue Beetle number 7. This is from last month, but I got it at the end of the month, so I had to read it this month. Really fun. I liked it. I think this was a fun kind of chapter in that story. I'm sad that it's going to end at chapter 11, though, or issue 11. I don't understand why. Because, you know, 2 weeks ago, they had an interview where they were like, yeah, it's probably going to go on for as long as we feel like going. And then, like 2 weeks later, they were like, nah, never mind. It's going to go only up to issue 11, not even 12. Like, why does it not get to go there? And they were ramping up for this other storyline, and I feel like they just had to cut it, like, halfway through, and that's kind of disappointing, right? Especially because this is an art team, or you know, a team in general, with great art, with good storytelling, with a really fun character. And it sucks that they got canceled, right? Because it doesn't seem like they would have just kind of stopped after 11 issues when they had this really big interest in keep going, right? So I don't know, but yeah, issue 7 was fun. No One number 8. This is probably the best issue since the first one. And, well, that's not really saying much because I haven't really liked too many of those issues. But I think once I read the whole story back to back, I'll like it a lot more. So, yeah, here's Rebel Moon number 3. I can't remember too much about this one, to be honest with you. A lot of it feels very like we're just world building. And it's like, well, maybe you could have done that differently. Or maybe it's not necessary to do that, right? Like, if you wanted to give the backstory of characters, maybe you should have done it in the movie, right? And not in a side story comic book. But at the same time, I like a lot of the elements in the comic book, so I can't like hate it too much. The plot line doesn't really make too much sense to me, so it is what it is. But I liked it. I think it was fine. Here's Dead Lucky number 12. This is the end of the series, and I'm disappointed about it. I think I mentioned it in my check-in video. Basically, I feel like there was too much time spent on this idea of like, we're here for veterans and not enough on the actual story. And that's disappointing because if you wanted to be there for veterans, maybe there's a better way to do that, like actually giving money to them or, you know, doing something that actually relates to them directly instead of like kind of going through this weird, like, okay, let's talk about tokusatsu, but then let's make this character that is a ex-soldier that's going through PTSD because all of her people and friends died, so she has survival guilt on top of that. But then not actually make it relevant to the story all that often, beyond like it's the reason she got powers. And then never explain how she got her powers. And then just kind of make every episode about how she's sad, or every issue about how she's sad, but then never actually try to resolve anything. And then kind of keep introducing these characters that don't really end up being, you know, meaningful antagonists at all. And so even though there's a lot of interesting imagery and cool stuff that I like in Dead Lucky, especially the second half of Dead Lucky, the second set of 6 issues, really felt like nothing was going on. And that's disappointing because last year when she was in Supermassive, I was like in love. I was like, dude, this is like awesome. This is the best, you know, Vivi moment that I've seen in her whole series. And it wasn't even in, you know, Dead Lucky. It was in Supermassive crossovers. So I don't know, man. I'm a little bit disappointed by that. I'm a little bit salty about it as well, but it is what it is. I'll talk about it more deeply later when I reread this series, right? Here is Green Arrow number 10. This is great. It really felt like the Arrow TV show. Like all of, Oliver's friends and family showed up to help him, and that was really fun. I really like that. I think that that's great. I really love what Joshua Williamson is doing with this run. Here's Wonder Woman number 7. I love Gilliam March's art style, but I think it's because of the coloring. It didn't really work for me in this issue, and it's kind of disappointing. Also, the story in this issue just was unnecessary. Like, I feel like there could have been a different story that could have been more relevant to the Wonder Woman that Tom King is writing right now than going shopping for a gift for Batman and having this weird interaction with Superman the whole time, where you're in this weird ass like 90s mall in space. It was really odd, and I dislike it the more that I step away from it. Like, the more that there's distance between me having read it and me like thinking about it now, the worse it becomes. At the time, I was like fine with it. I was like, okay, whatever. But I think it was a waste of an issue, and that's disappointing. Like, maybe just have a break for a week or a month and just be like, okay, sorry, the volume ended. We're gonna have an annual, or we're gonna have like a side story that's about a different Wonder Woman character, and then we'll come back to Wonder Woman next issue, or there's a hiatus for a month, we'll be back later, right? Like, I feel like I understand wanting to give Sam Pierre a break. I don't understand putting in this issue that doesn't matter, and then that looks significantly worse than the rest of the run. So I don't know. Here's Blue Beetle number 8. Like this a lot. There's a lot of angst added to this, and I like that. I thought that was good. Here's Wonder Woman number 8. I think I mentioned it yesterday in the haul video. A lot of the imagery here is quite beautiful and interesting, and in a different context, I would have found it like sexy or attractive. But in the context of what's happening in this issue, it's deeply uncomfortable. And so I commend Tom King for doing that, because it's like, it works really well, because it's like, okay, Wonder Woman is this like feminine icon, right? She is supposed to be attractive and hot and beautiful and compassionate and all of these things. But because of how the issue works, it like twists it. So it's like this weird, like hyper, like 50s, like Stepford wife type thing that is actually more uncomfortable than it is like attractive, right? Even if you might be like a traditionalist, which I'm not, and you might like gender roles, it's so counter to what Wonder Woman is that it's so like deeply disassociative. It's like really like, dissonant. Sorry, not disassociative. It's dissonant, and that causes like discomfort, right? And I like that. I think that was really well done. So good job. Tom King did a great job with that. Sam Pierre did an amazing job with the artwork, and I really like that issue. Here's Unnatural Order number 4. This is the end of the series for now, and I liked it. I thought it was really, really cool. The concept is really great. The artwork is fun, but I feel like there could have been more work done to make this series a little bit more relevant, more valuable, much bigger in scale. I don't necessarily think that changing the issue amount was the problem. I think that changing how the story was structured would have been a bit better, right? And also, I'm not really attached to any of the characters. And so even though I really like how they look and stuff, the story is deeply personal. It's like they were people in one way, and then this thing happens, and now they're people in a different way, and the main character is trying to change it back to the first time. But then, are you killing this version of the character? Are you saving the previous one? Like, what's really happening here? And that would have been much more relevant and interesting if I gave a shit about the characters. And I just didn't see like there was enough work done for me to care about any of them, right? So, like, I understood their motivations and understood why they were the way they were, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I cared about them, right? And so, I think there could have been more work done for that, right? Maybe make the team smaller instead of 6 people having like 2 or 3, and then having them also be relevant to the main character ahead of time instead of like only until he met them, so that there was more connection between these characters, right? But I don't know. I'll do a review for it properly later. But for now, those are my thoughts there, right? So yeah, here's Transformers number 7. I love the inclusion of Jorge Corona's artwork here. It makes the human characters look a lot more interesting. And since these next couple issues have to kind of deal with the fact that Sparky and Carly both Spike and Carly both basically lost everyone they knew because of the Decepticon attack, I think it's valuable to have the human characters be more like human looking, which is a really weird way of saying that I don't like Daniel Warren Johnson's drawing for humans. Everything else that he does is phenomenal. Everything about the way he draws creatures and the way he draws robots and the way he draws panels and the way that he makes like the text effects part of the scene, all of that is phenomenal. But I just can't get over how ugly his human characters look, right? At least, you know, from the series that I've read from him. And I'm happy that Jorge Corona was included because I like the human characters he draws better. But I do like how Daniel Warren Johnson draws robots better. Also, this issue had amazing stuff in here that was really, really phenomenal and really cool. Soundwave was a badass in this. So, yeah, I think I'll stop talking about that because I mentioned it a lot in the review I did for that issue, right? So, yeah, here's Thundercats number 3. Good stuff. It feels really slow, but I am enjoying every issue. And there's a really good bit of action sequence here where there's a lot of tension between the Thundercats that correlates to them having to fight over stuff. And then they have this duel that was quite powerful and really fun. And the action sequences related to that were great. So I like that a lot. Here's Marvel's Must-Haves number 2. This is collecting Uncanny Avengers number 1, Captain America number 3, and Daredevil number 2. And the only one that I liked out of these was the first issue, which is Uncanny Avengers number 1. The other two were not really my vibe, and that's because mostly I'm not interested in Daredevil or Captain America's story at this point, because I have no clue what the fuck's going on in those series. So it was really disorienting to be like, okay, I understand the premise of like Uncanny Avengers, and then get pulled into Captain America's story that made no sense to me, and then pulled into maybe the most boring thing that you could do with Daredevil ever, at least from my point of view, which is actually make him be a priest properly that takes care of kids. Like, that is insanely boring, and that doesn't really inspire confidence in me wanting to check out that series, which is, you know, the whole point of these. So that was a bit disappointing, but I mean, I understand why it was there. It doesn't appeal to me, right? So yeah, and then we have Penthouse Comics number 2. This is the second issue of the relaunch, and there's some upgrades to how they did things. So they got rid of most of the typos and issues with the text in the bubbles, so that's good. They added a new story, that's good. But I still have issues with some of the choices that they made. It seems like they're trying to go for a progressive feeling set of stories. And I don't think it's working well. First of all, I don't think that the demographic of people that would buy Penthouse, which I am kind of like an outlier for, would want progressive, you know, modern inclusive storytelling, because I mean, broadly speaking, the people that buy comic books, as in American comic books, are old white men, and the ones that would buy Penthouse are probably specifically going to be mostly old white men. And then there was this interesting, weird kind of concept that was prevalent across several stories, which is black people trying to exist in a white society, which, understandable, but not necessarily what I went to Penthouse for. And also, I think that the actual Penthouse part of it, you know, the photo shoots, have so far not been that interesting. Like, I feel like some rando person on OnlyFans with 3 followers can do a better job at you know, doing a photo shoot than basically anything that they showed so far, and that's disappointing. And also, it's like they're a little bit less attractive than like someone from OnlyFans because they're less genuine feeling, right? Because it's so like perfect, and they do a lot of Photoshop on the photo shoot and the model to make them almost have this like fuzzy perfect skin that's just like not interesting to look at. at least for me, right? So I've had some issues with this, and I do want to make another video talking about it more in depth before the next issue comes out. But so far, I've liked it, although I think that there needs to be a better selection of stories that isn't like low-key doing like a social justice thing, because, or like a political identity, or like an identity politics type thing. Because like, I get it, I understand the point of it, but I don't think that it works for the audience that Penthouse is for, right? And that kind of dissonance is not, it doesn't work for me, right? So yeah, moving on. Now we have the stuff that I bought this past week, last Wednesday, and it starts with Green Arrow number 11, which is great. I don't have boards for my bags right now, so I just have to wait for a while. Saturday is Free Comic Book Day. One of the comic book shops that I like to go to has a big sale, so I'm just gonna use that sale to buy boards, and it'll be great. And I got the bags for free, basically, so very happy about that. And here's Green Arrow number 11. Like I said last time, Green Arrow number 10 felt like the Green Arrow show, and these also feels like the Green Arrow show. Like, it feels like something straight out of the CW Arrow show, and to me, that's wonderful because I loved that show growing up. I realized, eventually that it was not that good of a show, but it's nostalgic to me. It's fun. Me and my dad and my sister always quote, the fact that, like the opening scene, right? I was on an island for 5 years and I came back and I'm here to save my city, and all of that, stupid stuff from the show, because it was something that we really bonded over for a long time when I was like 10 or 12 or whatever. And so kind of getting to see that in a comic book is great. I really, really like that. And also the fact that it actually ties in with other things that are actually relevant to the comic books is great. I really like that. I think it's doing a great job at tying everything together, being the like seminal Green Arrow. Like, if you need to get into the character or you have fun with the character but you want to experience a new story or a new version of it, read this, right? Like that's what this book feels like, and I think that it's great. Then we have Dick Tracy number 1, and there's like a bunch of people that worked on this. The most important ones being Something Segura, let's see, Alex Segura with Michael Moresi. I don't know who did which part, but I basically picked this up just because I like Michael Moresi's work, and I never read a Dick Tracy book before, and I actually really liked it. I thought it was really, really fun. It was really enjoyable. It definitely had that really noir feeling to it. The artwork is not necessarily my favorite, but I can't say I hate it. It has this like classic style to it, and I really enjoy Dick Tracy's ridiculous outfit. I love that. Also, this cover and this matching back cover is great. I really love that. I think that that's very phenomenal. But the story is enjoyable and interesting, and it's quite surprising that I like that, because although I don't hate noir stories, I'm not the most experienced in them, and I don't really necessarily think that like a basic detective story is that attractive to me. Like I enjoy them, right? I watch a lot of detective and cop shows with my dad, but it's not necessarily my favorite thing ever. It's just kind of like a easy story to, kind of like turn my brain off to. And I was feeling very impressed with what Dick Tracy was showing me, right? So I like that a lot. Here we have Conan the Barbarian number 10. This was a great issue. The only complaint I have is that I don't really like how Diego Rodriguez colors things. And that's a little bit disappointing, because basically I feel like my experience reading Conan 5 through 8 was significantly lowered because of the way that it was colored. And I really wanted to have Dean White back alongside Rob Del Toro, right? Because I really love how they work together. The way that Dean White's colors match so nicely with Rob Del Toro's artwork. And well, I don't necessarily think that Diego Rodriguez is significantly worse at this point. He's not so bad that it's distracting. It's just a little bit annoying because I was like really looking forward to this one person doing this, and then it turns out that this other person is doing it, and Diego Rodriguez is actually going to be the main colorist for the series going forward, and well, I don't necessarily like that. So yeah, Maybe it was the color palette that he chose, because it didn't feel that bad here, but because of the scenes and the way that they're taking place, it has to be a little bit different from when he was working with Doug Braithwaite. But you can definitely notice some of the work that he did with Doug Braithwaite is clearly like his standard, right? Like this like glow, that's like this orange glow around characters and stuff when there's like light like that, was all over that second arc in the story, and I did not like that. I don't know why. It's like distracting and annoying to me. So thankfully, it didn't happen all that often here, but I hope it stays like that. I don't really want to see it more. And I'm a little bit upset about it, but I mean, it's ultimately not that big of a deal. Rob Del Toro's artwork still shines through, and it's really good, and the story is phenomenal. The Dream Team was there for a bit, and then it's no longer there, and that's kind of sad, right? So, yeah, here we have Dawn Runner number 2, and this story is great. There's some amazing panel work here. There's a really interesting bit of spreads here as well. Like, look at that image. That's so great. However, I still think the blocking of the action is a bit crazy. Out of context, this looks real nice. And then you try to understand what the fuck is happening, and it's pretty unclear. Like, I don't know if it's holding the Iron King with its head, or if it's biting it, or if it's stepping on it, or what. And then there's this like random leg in the back here that looks like a T-Rex. And, it's a bit tough to understand what the fuck's going on, which is a little bit annoying. But everything else looks great. The colors are nice and muted in a really nice way. The storytelling is good. I like the characters. I like what's going on. I'm a bit confused about some of the stuff, but it's really fun. I really like it. Then we have Ultimate Spider-Man number 4, and this was a phenomenal issue. The artwork here is not the same as usual. This is a different person filling in. However, this issue was probably my favorite one, besides the first one. It was so tense and interesting, and it was basically just a conversation between Harry and Gwen, who's his wife, and Peter and MJ, who are also married, right? And the whole time they were at dinner, and they were talking about a bunch of stuff, and I didn't know if they were gonna punch each other or like start a orgy, right? And I was like, either one would be cool. But it was ridiculous that I was so interested and invested in what was basically a very basic conversation between two married couples that are just getting to know each other and kind of decide if they want to be friends or not. And that was great. Like, I don't know why. That was immensely enjoyable and satisfying. I read it this morning, and I was like hyped afterwards. I was like, damn, dude, that was so good. And I was like, why? Because it's just a dinner conversation. Like, there is no way that was that interesting. And I think it was just mostly the tension that was managed between these characters, right? Like, I really wasn't sure if they're going to start fucking or start fighting, and that was great. So, yeah, here's Red Sonja number 10. This was a pretty fun issue. The stuff that's happening with the Red Sonja directly was not that interesting. The artwork was great. There were some amazing poses here that Walter Giovanni managed to get Red Sonja in. However, the stuff with the gods has been the most interesting stuff, and I'm really excited about that, especially because it turns out that the Gracie character that died last time might be something different than what we thought, right? So that's pretty cool. But yeah, overall, I'm still enjoying it. I like this issue more than the last one, I think. I can't remember exactly, but I'm having fun with it. And then we have two oversized comics here. So we have The Forged, number 7, which is great. I really love this one. Basically, they go to a specific place and they start doing some recon missions in order to try to figure out what the fuck's going on. And it all goes to shit really quickly, and there's problems, and it's going to be crazy, and I'm very excited to see how that goes. And I really, really liked it. I can't wait to get the rest of the arc so that I can do a review for it. Honestly, I'm just really liking The Forged, right? So, yeah, and then finally, we have Blasphemous number 2, and this was way better than the first issue. Like, the first issue was interesting, like, there was good stuff happening here in terms of, like, the artwork and stuff, but the second one was so much better. We finally understand what the fuck the conflict is, we understand what's going on, we understand why, and the artwork was a little bit better in my opinion, and we got introduced to this other character that's basically, like, the hero, but because of the perspective that we're following, they're actually the villain in this case. And I'm very excited to see where this all goes. And, you know, the more I read Mirka Andolfo's stories, the more I just keep wondering, like, are they all together in the same universe? Or is there, like, a multiverse thing where, like, the the Mirka and Dolfo verse is a thing or not, because a lot of them are very similar, obviously in aesthetic and stuff, but also in like certain concepts that pop up across things, right? Like, is Blasphemous in the same universe as is it in the same universe as Mercy, right? Or is it related in some way to Unsacred, or is it related to Unnatural in any way? Like, I'm very curious about that. And is like Sweet Paprika the future version of this? Like, because in Sweet Paprika there's also gods versus angels, right? Or like gods and angels and demons, or devils, right? So all of it is really interesting. Or is it just like Mirka and Dolfo just likes these themes specifically and these aesthetics, and so she just continuously pours it into her work? Either way, I'm not really sure, but it's enjoyable and interesting to think about. And I really liked that issue. So, okay, you know what, guys? I actually forgot another stack of comics here, so we'll talk about them now. So I also had the free Marvel must-haves, the first one. Not much to say about that one. I thought all of it was great. I had this manga comics preview thing that was okay. Wasn't bad. It wasn't, whatever. It was all right. Planet of the Apes, Fall of Man. This was cool, but I don't think I'm interested in knowing about this stuff. Like, I don't need a shit ton of background lore. Like, I watched the movies. I understand kind of how man became the way they are now, right? Like, it doesn't, I don't know. I didn't feel like it was necessary. Then we have Conan the Barbarian #9. Amazing stuff. Dean White was the colorist here, and that was really, really good stuff. I really liked it. Not much to say about that one. I already did a review for it. So, good stuff. Then we have Red Sonja #9. Can't remember too much about this one either, to be honest with you. I read it at the beginning of the month, so honestly, probably you have a better time understanding my thoughts on these based on the check-in video. Here's Dawn Runner #1. This was really good, but I had some issues with some of the, it wasn't scaling, it was blocking, like I mentioned earlier. Here's Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong. Some elements of it were good, but in general, I think like it's missing stuff. And I feel like I say that a lot about, Elseworlds type DC stuff or crossovers and stuff. So yeah. Here's #3 of Ultimate Spider-Man. This was good stuff, but compared to issue 4, that was pretty boring. Even though that was like actually full of action, right? So yeah, here's Transformers #6. Really crazy twist here at the end to finish off the arc, and it was cool, but not necessarily my favorite thing ever. It was just kind of like really good stuff happened. I liked it a lot, but there was a big moment there. The big twist was confusing to me. I didn't really understand it, so hopefully that gets explained later. Here's Thundercats #2. Not much to say about this one. So yeah, and then there's Helen of Windhorror right here, which I liked a lot. I think this was really, really fun, right? So yeah, not much else to say about this, honestly. I really like these things a lot. This one is quite exciting because it combines pulp fiction, right? Pulp fantasy, which is my jam. I really love this stuff, with this more modern-esque kind of vibe to it, right? I don't know what to call it. I think it's gothic. I think that's the right terminology right there. But it almost feels like a little bit like Narnia, or a little bit like House of Anubis, or a little bit like that sort of like magic house like genre, kids in a magic house genre that I'm not really aware of the name of, right? So yeah, either way, that's it for this section. I'll stitch this in wherever it fits, and hopefully it's not too awkward, right? So yeah, see you guys in the normal video. Yeah, I think that's it for the comic books. So yeah, maybe this is gonna slowly turn into a comic book channel at this point, because I feel like it's so much easier to read them than manga, which is funny because the reason I started getting into manga really seriously was because it was easier to read manga than novels, right? But I don't know, I think this is gonna stay a manga channel. That was just kind of like a random thought that I kind of entertained for a bit. And this is still majority, manga, but it's gonna be everything I read, like always. So yeah, let's actually talk about the manga here. So give me 1 second first. Okay, so in terms of manga, I basically failed at reading like half of what I said I was going to read, but I did read some of it. So let's actually talk about the digital stuff first. Let me pull out my notebook again, and hopefully not topple everything that I have next to me. Let's see. I read Initial D. I read Giant Killing. I did not read Medalist. I did not read God of High School #1. I did read all the Spy Family. I did not start any of the Slam Dunk volumes, which is sad. I think I will try to start them next month, but I have way too many sci-fi things, so I don't know. I did not read The Boxer or Pokemon, so that's a little bit disappointing. However, I did read 2 of the new series that I bought 2 months ago, and I started the 3rd one, but I have not, finished it, right? So I also did not read Marry a Billionaire at all, which is also disappointing. I'm kind of sad about that. And I think I'm just going to strike it from my TBR for now, and I'll just come back to it later, right? Maybe in August or something, right? So, yeah, let's actually talk about Initial D first. So, the version of Initial D that I have is a digital version. It seems to be the original Tokyo Pop one because there's so many problems with it. First of all, the scans of it don't look that clear, so that's disappointing and annoying, honestly. The translation work is pretty bad. In the sense that, the characters don't have the right names or have these weird, substitutes or shortenings that don't really make too much sense. Like Takumi, I think, is the name of the main character. Everyone calls him Tak, T-A-K, and I don't think they ever mention in the book that his name is actually Takumi, right? So, I don't know why that was, and, my buddy Robert told me about that. So, yeah, the flow of the conversation and the way that the writing is set up inside the word balloons is bad, which to me just feels very similar to like reading early Dragon Ball, or like if you read Dragon Ball from Viz, any of the editions actually, you notice, they had a really tough time with this back in the day, right? Because it was like, early stuff that they did. And I read the volume that I had. It was only the first volume, and by the end of the first volume, I'm not sure that I'm that interested in the story. Like, I want to know where the race goes, right? Because that's where it ends, right before Takumi does the first race. But I don't know that I'm invested enough to buy the physical edition, right? Nor am I invested enough, because it was bad, to buy more digital volumes. So I'm kind of in limbo. I also don't want to watch the anime because it's so long. It's like 80 episodes or something, and that's too much for me right now. If it's more than 30, I'm not interested. So, generally not interested. I might push through for some series, but not for Initial D. So I'm not really sure what to do. Like, I want to read more of it because, people like it for a reason, right? There has been nothing to push me in that direction beyond my own interest, and at some point that is not enough, because I have way more things to buy that I could buy instead of Initial D that I actually am deeply invested in, right? So it's weird. I might just have to let this one go, which is sad, but it is what it is, man. I guess I don't really have too much to say about that. I also read Giant Killing. It has a very, what's the word? Ted Lasso vibe to it. It's this guy who, it's actually kind of the complete opposite of Ted Lasso in like who the character is, but it has the same vibe of like this team growing, becoming closer and more related to their city than ever before because of this crazy coach that they get, right? And Ted Lasso goes out of his way to do that, right? But the guy in Giant Killing does that by accident. And he's more focused on actually making his players do good, right? And making the team win, which is the opposite of Ted Lasso. But it still has that same kind of vibe. So I like that aspect. However, I did not like the artwork. And it feels like, A, it was machine translated, and B, like, no one went over to edit how it was done or how the wording was made for, or like the text was made for the word balloons, because it felt like the font was bad. Like, it was not the right font for the book. It was kind of annoying to look at the lettering. And sometimes the translation just didn't feel right. Like, it didn't flow. And that's kind of annoying. Also, it was not really all that soccer focused. Like, soccer is the main like point of it, right? Like, Giant Killing is about a shitty soccer team beating a big proper soccer team, but there wasn't too much soccer going on in this first volume. It was mostly like setting up the coach, right? Which is not a problem, but compounded with all of the issues that I had with not liking the art style, not liking the lettering, think the translation is bad, just made it worse. Because it's like, well then why the hell am I reading this? So that was pretty disappointing, because I thought Giant Killing was going to be a really cool, like, action-heavy sports series, like similar to Blue Lock or Aoshi, right? Like, that was what I was expecting. What I got was quite different. Not that I dislike what it reminded me of. I love Ted Lasso, but if I want to watch something like Ted Lasso, I'll just watch Ted Lasso. This was not really giving me what I wanted out of it, right? So my expectations were not met, and they were quite different from what I was expecting. And so, or what I was expecting was quite different from what I was actually going to be given. And so I'm just kind of in this place where, like, I'm just not going to read more of this. So that's kind of sad that the 2 sports series that I read did not manage to convince me to continue reading them. That sucks, but it is what it is. And then that's it for the digital stuff. Let's actually talk about the physicals now, right? So I started reading Gal Gamer, and I have 2 problems with it. First of all, well, actually, I have 1 problem with it, and that is that it doesn't have the spot coloring, right? It's supposed to have blue and pink colors everywhere that match this. And apparently, Yen Press said that they didn't do it because the Japanese edition doesn't have it. Who cares? Why is that a consideration? If it's possible to get it in that form, somehow, digital or physical, and you have the ability to do so, and you're charging me $13 for the book, I don't care if it's not equal to the Japanese version. You should give me the best version, right? And the best version is the one that has spot coloring, because more features is better. Not really, but you guys kind of get the point, right? And so when I saw that recently, that was kind of upsetting. I saw that after they announced that they were going to license, or that they were licensed already, and that they were going to be working on that. I've heard it called The Green Yuri, which is the boy that she liked was not a boy at all. I think that's what the series is called. And that series has green spot coloring or green backgrounds or something. And someone asked them, hey, you didn't do it for Gal Gamer. Why are you going to do it? Are you going to do it for this one? And they said, yes, we're going to do it for this one. Gal Gamer didn't have the physical edition with spot coloring. And that's a lame excuse. I don't like that. So I'm, for all intended purpose, upset with this book because it doesn't have what it should have. I don't care that the Japanese edition doesn't have that, because I'm not reading the Japanese edition. I'm reading the American edition that is already different from the Japanese edition by sheer size and the fact that it's in English. If it was possible at all to get access to that version with the spot coloring, it should have been pursued. Do I know this to be a fact or not? Like, maybe Japan was like, no, only the digital can have this. If that is the case, that is stupid, because there is no reason why you should make a digital format of something be better than the physical one. Like, especially when it's like exactly the same thing. If it was like an audiobook is obviously better digitally that you can put on your phone instead of like a physical, audiobook that you have to carry around the stupid case for. But when it comes to physical books, like normal books, I don't think that works, especially for comics. And I'm upset about it, as you can clearly see. So yeah, my feelings on the actual story though are that it's cute, it's enjoyable. I have not really gotten invested yet, which is why I didn't finish reading it. And I got distracted. I was like, I'd rather read other stuff right now, so I did. However, this is pretty relaxing because there's really no stakes here. It's just a really hot girl trying to teach this kind of loser guy how to play video games better, and she doesn't notice that she's doing, hot, attractive stuff, and he gets flustered about it. And that is cute and enjoyable, and I like it. But it makes me viscerally upset that it doesn't have all of the fucking pieces that it should, or all of the little features that it should. That's just annoying. Because you fucking know, especially in Japan, that one day they're going to be like, oh, now we have color edition. So it's going to have the spot coloring that we initially should have had, right? And that's just bullshit. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I got so pressed about it, but it makes me upset. So yeah, that's it for that. I read Smoking Behind the Supermarket with You, and I really liked it. I thought it was fun and enjoyable. This is probably the best Square Enix volume I've ever had in my hands in terms of like how it feels. Doesn't have any color pages. I don't think there's any color pages inside the book anyway, so it doesn't really bother me. Well, I mean, it has this, but I mean, that's not a color page. That's just a page, right? Well, I guess it is brown and blue, so I guess it is a color page, whatever. But the story is great. I really like it. It's really relaxing. The artwork could be better, but also it could be way worse. So I don't really have a problem with it. If, you know, like this is like a 9 out of 10 for me. If I wanted it to be a 10 out of 10, I would want it to have better artwork, right? Like something that doesn't look so Chainsaw Man-esque, because I don't like the Chainsaw Man art style. And somehow that is really popular right now, and it just annoys me. So yeah, I read Tengen Hero Wars. This is fun. It's very Record of Ragnarok-esque. However, Titan Manga did a horrible job with the printing quality, with the what's it called, with the quality control, right? They had quite a few issues with that, and I don't know, something about the way that they do make their books makes them feel so cheap compared to everything else. And that's really disappointing. Like even the paper feels so rough and textured in a way that's not satisfying when you compare it to like a Spy Family volume. And I don't know what to call it. This paper feels so smooth and clean, and the printing is wonderful on it. And you know, this is an Italian edition, so it has the wonkier or less pretty looking cover, but the paper inside of it is actually great. Whereas this one is like, the cover looks good, but the book doesn't feel good. Something about it feels off, and the paper is disgusting, and the spine is so tight. But the story is interesting. I will, you know, continue to check it out, but it's not going to be a priority, because why would I make it a priority, right? If it's going to be significantly worse than any other book I buy, I'm just not going to buy it that often, right? So I don't know. It is what it is. And then finally, I read 3 volumes of Spy Family. So here's number 4 and number 5 and number 6. I got to the end of the tennis arc, and I had a lot of fun with it. And there really isn't too much else to say, because I'm going to do reviews for each of these. And I mean, at this point, everyone knows what Spy Family is. Everyone enjoys it. I loved it. I think it's so fun. There was a specific gag in the last arc that I read, which was Midnight saying she loves Lloyd, like in her head, and Anya like reading her mind, blinking, rubbing her eyes, looking again, and then just having to like break down because she's like, what the fuck is going on? Like that gag is hilarious, and I hope that happens more, because it's funny as hell. But it really just makes me think Lloyd is a harem protagonist, and there has to be fan fiction about that, right? So I don't know. It's pretty funny. And I really like the series, and it's really relaxing and enjoyable. And I love how it balances stupid, simple comedy and like crazy high octane looking and feeling action. And I think that Tatsuya Endo really hit the jackpot with this. Like, I'm pretty sure it's known that Tatsuya Endo doesn't really like the story that much. Like he's not that interested in writing it, which, I mean, compared to other mangaka, means that he's just like not willing to like kill himself over it, which is, you know, maybe not good anyway. So thank God that he's not doing that. But like, he has to like it if he's made 100 chapters of it, right? Or 100 plus chapters of it. And I really love this story. I really enjoy it. It's so phenomenal. Like it's just so funny and ridiculous and so hype as well. So I don't know, whoever managed to help him make this a thing, you know, the editors and stuff, thank you. We appreciate you. You guys did a great job. And that's basically the end of my video today. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you thought. Thank you guys very much for watching, and see you guys later.